All right. So again, I'm not going to lie. When I was flipping through the document and I saw this, I was just like, what? Signal, like I brought up again, like signal messages, Chris Mellon. And this is right. Let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. This is Chris Mellon and Sean Kirkpatrick having a signal message, right? Like going back and forth on signal, right?
Correct.
And Sean Kirkpatrick is in blue and Chris Mellon is in dark gray here.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I found some of these messages to be quite fascinating. I wanted to read a few of them here. This again is from Sean Kirkpatrick to Chris Mellon. Grusch has made claims that he's contacted us and we've never responded. That's just not true. He's also made claims that we don't have access to investigate his claims. That's also not true. If I recall correctly, you indicated he refused to come talk with us, and you're quoted as suggesting as such. I'd suggest you emphasize the need to come speak with us. You have the contact email. So it sounds like Chris Mellon is working as an intermediary, right, for Grusch and Kirkpatrick. And that was on Monday, June 12th. I'm assuming this is 2023.
Correct.
Okay. And so a day later, Chris Mellon responds, "Hi, Sean. Do you have a specific example of Dave claiming he's contacted Arrow and your office refused to respond? That sounds strange, as during a conversation yesterday, he told me Arrow was not a lawfully designated recipient of his whistleblower info, hence his reason for not contacting Arrow. I also do not recall saying Dave refused to come talk to Arrow. I certainly did not do so in the debrief article or my article in Political, and I've done no interviews yet about Dave." And then Sean responds, "It was on the interview Sunday. Pentagon is preparing a response. His assertion that we aren't lawfully empowered is clearly incongruence with the law." So this is before he testified before Congress. This is just after the News Nation interview broke with Ross Coulthart, right? That's what he's referring. Because in that interview, David Grusch does say that. He does say that Sean Kirkpatrick's got my number. Why hasn't he called me? Essentially. Were there any messages in here that you thought were, because there's a lot to read, were there any in here that you thought were worth pointing out? John?
Yeah, I mean, you went over some good ones there, and then I pulled up, I have a timeline made. I can send you this link so you have it. And as we're recording this, I still haven't put what just came through this, but I have made this gigantic timeline of everything that's happened, like during the OSAP ATIP years and then the post 2017 years. And it really helps me in times like now to kind of cross-reference. The interview on News Nation was June 11th, 2023. That's in the timeline here. And point being is that is what, just confirming what you kind of assumed was right. You're absolutely right. That's the News Nation interview. That was June 11th, 2023. And obviously we get, various interviews through other podcasts and stuff like that from David Grusch. So one of the things that I think the next step is for me to kind of address some of these text messages, because I was surprised Mr. Mellon was saying, "Oh, where is an example of this?"
Totally.
That was kind of like common knowledge that's what he was saying. So I was a little surprised at that he was reluctant to agree with it. And that is one thing. Let me go through some of the others.
Maybe he hadn't seen the News Nation interview, as crazy as that is. Maybe Chris Mellon hadn't seen that yet.
I'd be surprised, but
he said that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. One of the other ones I know that Mellon had said that he wasn't essentially saying, I have to find it here, but essentially wasn't necessarily saying that David Grusch was being accurate, but rather he felt he was sincere and genuine. I had put that in the article itself that I wrote. So you kind of see a little bit of behind the scenes of how Christopher Mellon was feeling about David Grusch's story. And to be honest with you, that very much aligns with how I view it. I do believe, and I've said this so many times since he's come around, I don't get the feeling he's maliciously lying. I really don't. I mean, even after these
Dave
documents.
Grusch, right?
Yeah, I
Or who
really
you
don't get
yeah.
that impression that he's
No,
being
no,
malicious.
I don't either, man. To be fair, like to David Grusch, my whole thing with Grusch is he, in my mind, he has given us a treasure map to go. Like, here's the places, here's the name. Like, until somebody says we went to those places, this isn't real. This is his investigation is bullshit, which I just haven't heard that yet from anybody. I get that there's these issues with Arrow and going in and Title 50 and all this stuff. And most people, let's be real, 99% of people don't care about any of that. They don't even know what
Yeah.
that means. They don't care. They don't know. Like, what's happening? Is David Grush's claims real or not? What is happening with that? Because he kind of opened this can of worms, and then it's like, well, what's happening now? What is happening with David Grusch and his claims? Like, who's picking up the torch, essentially? Like, who's running with this? Like, what are we doing about it? I know they had a skiff where they sort of mentioned the non-UAP related claims that Grusch had made seemed verifiable or validated or whatever the actual term that was used, right? But not the fantastical parts of his story that has yet to be validated. And like, what's happening with that? That's all I'm waiting for. I think Grusch seems like a genuine guy, and I'm just waiting for that. Like, when is that going to happen? Like, what are we doing? Is he testifying again? Are they going to go to these places? Are they going to talk to all these 40 whistleblowers? What is happening?
Well,
right?
that's kind of the double-edged sword here. And what happens next is there is talk and rumor of a more another, at least one more public hearing. We know that there was a classified briefing recently, which happened to be with not only Tim Phillips but the director of DoD SAPCO. So we obviously are seeing traction there of some kind. But if you want congressional interest, and congressional interest spawns Arrow, and then you won't talk to Arrow, there's kind of an issue here. It's like, okay, you've gotten what you wanted. So now you don't trust Kirkpatrick. And prior to the end of 2023, everybody was saying Kirkpatrick this, Kirkpatrick that. Fine. And it all rooted to Kirkpatrick. But as I just said not too long ago, he's gone now. So what's the issue?
Gone.
Right.
That's a good
So
point.
are
I
we
agree.
really saying that Arrow is tainted? Okay, fine. Then prove to Congress Arrow is tainted. That the very thing that they funded is having money wasted due to a cover-up. And I'll be the first to say, I would buy that. If somebody could prove it, I'd be like, yeah, let's bring it out. I have no problems writing about it, profiling it, and putting it out there. But you can't make the accusation and just go, I'm not going to tell anybody because I don't trust anybody. Well, this is what everybody wanted, even in these text messages. And that's another part here where Kirkpatrick and Mellon go back and forth. Kirkpatrick says, you are defending and adjudicating, and you're undermining the very organization you purported to help establish for this purpose. That is an incredibly powerful thing to say to someone like Mr. Mellon, coming from someone like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick in a private signal communication back and forth. And to be honest with you, it's a great point. It's like, what is going on? Now, Mr. Mellon had essentially refuted that, and he says that he's trying to bring everybody to Arrow. So with that said, that mid of last year, it looks like Mr. Mellon trusted Arrow enough to take the people that he knew and said, hey, go to Arrow. So I think that's wonderful insight there. One minor note, I don't know if you have it on your screen there on that. It's on the screenshot of the article itself. But anyway, there's if anybody uses Signal, if somebody sends you a long message, there is text at the bottom that says read more. You can see it's truncated. So there's actually more. So I've filed an appeal to get the more. And I actually believe that there's more than what was released to me. But
I don't know if they have it. Let's be real. I'll be honest. I don't think they have it, because for them to get those screenshots, you have to have the original message. You have to hit read more and then get that screenshot, which they probably didn't do. They probably asked Chris Mellon or Kirkpatrick to send in these, and he didn't realize that when he was going through, right? And so he didn't hit read more on that screenshot. If he still, I bet they would have to have Sean Kirkpatrick go back through his signal messages, open that up again, hit the read more button, have it come up, and then send that additional screenshot in. But my guess is they don't have it. Otherwise, they would have sent it to you, right?
Well, yes and
But who
no.
knows?
I have proven cases where they've made mistakes.
They left something off.
And so that's just a mistake. Now, in
Sure.
the documents, go to there's one that I want to point out to you because
Let me find
it's
that read more.
easily
This
missed.
is what we're talking about,
This
right?
is the
right
last. Yeah, it's going to be the last
Yeah.
signal message that's on there.
Got it.
That's
This
it
one right here.
above, right? Okay. Look above where it says today and below where it says yesterday. It says you set disappearing message time to 1 week. What that means is that every message from there on out was going to be deleted on Signal after 1 week. Now, government
is that? Who
that's
who
Sean. It says you,
That's
and
Sean?
that would be
These
right.
are
So on
Sean's
Signal,
messages.
blue.
Got it.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay.
So
got
he
it.
set that. Now I want to know why, because to your point about they probably don't have it. You're likely right, but there are things called record retention schedules within every federal agency. And what record retention schedules are is that they're mandated in writing, black and white procedures and policy that prove for a certain amount of time, documents need to be withheld. Sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's in perpetuity or forever. And what I proved with Luis Elizondo's emails, this was a big story. He even used it in his IG complaint. They went beyond those record retention schedules. And I was able to prove beyond any doubt, nobody could dispute it on the DOD side. And I worked on this story for months, that they went against their own record retention schedule and deleted Luis Elizondo's emails. And the repercussion from that was obviously you lose all of that history. So what did we lose deleting all of that? Well, put a pin in that for now. Go back to these text messages. I don't know off the top of my head what the record retention schedule is, if anything, when it comes to text messages sent by the US government. But I can say, away from the UFO arena, talking broadly, there are numerous FOIA cases that have brought out text message exchanges as evidence. So, and what they're considered as a responsive document. Sometimes it's in FOIA court cases. Other times they're subpoenaed and brought into litigation cases, FOIA and otherwise. Point being, there's a retention schedule for these as well. So hopefully that data is saved. But when you automatically delete and destroy things after a week, that brings up another question. If the records retention schedule says that you have to save certain things for X amount of months, years, or decades, then you have to do that. You can't start deleting things just because you want to. So it's a really interesting gray area. Now, why I said put a pin in that other story, because since I wrote that, and I don't talk about this a lot because I'm still working on it, but just to throw it out there to you, because I never let things go. The DOD discovered, after I published my story, I was told that it made waves within the Pentagon because it was largely a very unacknowledged issue that the DOD was having. And then and I have to speak a little bit more generally here, but this will come out in the course of time here. But there were multiple agencies involved because Luis Elizondo's emails were likely not the only one. And when you have these records retention schedules, they are incredibly important to follow. And places like the National Archives get involved because they mandate the essential retention of these records. But on top of that, then they're on the receiving end once they're archived. Some are destroyed after 5 or 7 or 10 years, and that's okay. But what I was able to deduce with Elizondo's was that it was at least a couple of years too soon. That's a big problem. And NARA got involved, from what I understand. I believe DISA got involved, which is the Defense Information System Agency. But point being here is that multiple agencies then were kind of alerted to this issue and things started to happen. So that story is far from over. And I know that a lot of people thought it was specific to Luis Elizondo, myself included. But again, I don't let stories go. I will keep pushing and pushing and pushing until I can't push no more. And I'm definitely not done on that story. And it likely will more of that will come out soon.
No, that's fascinating, to be honest with you. Yeah, because there's two. I just saw another read more, right? So there's two of them.
Yeah.
2 parts where there's more information, how much is it? Is it one word? Is it just another sentence?
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Yeah, that is interesting. Because is Sean Kirkpatrick immediately screenshotting the messages? Like he gets them and he gets the conversation and he's immediately screenshotting, or was it upon request that he goes back? He can't, if that can't be the case, because if he's setting them to disappear within a week and only after halfway through the conversation, right? That's interesting. That's weird. I don't know.
We don't know halfway. If you go to the beginning, this is another thing.
Well, that's
you always look for the little smallest things.
Yeah.
When you look at the top of the messages, Sunday, June 11th says thanks. Now that's from
exactly.
Mr. Mellon to
Correct. What does
Dr.
that mean?
Sean. What does that mean? And what is it responding to? So what was released here is considered a responsive record pertaining to my request. And that request was for all information regarding the invitations to David Grusch to go speak with Arrow. That was the scope. They call that a scope. So the scope of the request was that.
Anything,
but where did screenshots come from? And that's the question mark that I don't have an answer to yet. But whether or not the records retention schedules mandate the retention of these text messages, or when they created the memorandum for the record, they created their attachments, and Kirkpatrick then went to his government issued phone on his Signal app, took these screenshots for the memorandum for record, but didn't save anything else because there's no mandate for it. So that is a possibility too, that the records retention schedule could just be non-existent for Signal messages.
Sure.
And if that's true, that is a bigger issue also, because you're using a government issued phone with a third party app, albeit encrypted, doing government work, but circumventing retention laws. Oh, that's a whole different story in itself. So, that's jumping the gun a little bit. We don't know the answers to this stuff yet, but it is a very fascinating thing for me to see, just simply because I'm such a geek with those schedules, because it goes to the heart of why I do what I do. And that's the preservation of all of this.
You're looking at the details too. I'm looking at the details right now and I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's on Wi-Fi. So he's clearly at his home or office, right? I don't know what this little symbol is. That looks like a car, doesn't it? Is that like when you connect to your car?
I'm trying to see what you're pointing at.
It's like a little...
Where are you
up here by the top right of the message at where he's got it? He's using an Android phone.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Sorry.
I don't know. That's interesting, right? And you see these three little dots at the very top of that first message. Like, what is that from?
Yeah, that would be the message above. I think you can see above that thanks. You can see kind of the blue. It even looks like it maybe was digitally altered.
Oh, you're right. Actually, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you know what?
They
did add this blur. They did. Yeah. They totally did.
Yeah. That's why I'm telling you, I get so much heat from people. Why do you care about the little details? That's why.
I agree, man. That shit matters.
That in itself, not only the read more, but that blur at the top and those three dots indicate that there are other messages, plus the common sense. You look at thanks. What is he saying?
Correct.
Thanks to?
Yeah. Thanks to what?
That spawns another case. I can tell you right there.
Nobody starts a conversation with thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. What? And he's got him as a contact, Chris Mellon, right in there. Now, typically, if you put in a number into Signal, I've used it a little bit. It can bring it up, but you kind of got to add them. So were they having other conversations prior to this? Was it only about this and Grusch? And why does David Grusch need an intermediary? Why can't he have his own personal connection like all the other witnesses that were reaching out to Arrow and giving testimony? And they were also talking about things that David Grusch has brought up. Like there's nothing that's in David Grusch's investigation, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know the full scope of it, but I don't think there's anything in Grusch's investigation that other people who went to Arrow and testified said, right? They said the same stuff. There's a secret group, UFO reverse engineering, crashed UFOs. We got bodies, they're telling their own stories. How is any of that different from what Grusch is going to say? What bombshell is Grusch dropping that isn't in some of the other testimony that happened? I think really at the end of the day, Grusch just didn't like Sean Kirkpatrick, didn't like the way Arrow was approaching the investigation. Yeah, I think we also have to keep in mind Grusch was part of the UAPTF, right? So he was essentially part of an Arrow as well back in the day, and that's what his investigation is from. Maybe there's some just you know what I mean? It's like the other team. It's like, oh, I'm not giving them my work that I did. I don't know. Again, this is all speculation. I don't know, but I think you made a great point, essentially, to sum all this up before we move on to Kona Blue here, is that the full story is not out there, and this helps fill in a lot of blanks about the misconception of Grusch and Arrow and what was holding them back. What was the wall in between them that was holding it back? It sounds like a lot of that was answered for Grusch, and why didn't Grusch go in if his questions were being answered? So yeah, it leaves a lot open, man. No,
Yeah.
great job on this. Great
I
job.
appreciate it.